there's a pretty good chance that you already knew from the jump, or you found out and you're still there. And I know this is probably going to sound like a bunch of BS, or there's people that play each other like that. And honestly, I feel like there's very nuanced cases of that happening, but more often than not, by the time you're with someone who either has...
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man who may have decided to include running his mouth to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here to talk about marriage. Or something close to it. Or the wedding. Oh no, it's definitely marriage, but there is the dating part of it before the marriage, not necessarily like in the marriage, so it's not like I'll have to put any disclaimers to it. But all in all, I do intend on talking about marriage, or at least the process of getting married, and some of the caveats, because, well, it's like there's some people that are looking to get there and they are not feeling particularly happy that people are ready to see their information. And on the other hand, there's other people that are looking for any means necessary to actually get there. But all in all, I do intend on getting to the bottom of both those scenarios. And should you want to get to the bottom of it all with me, I would suggest that you listen all the way till the end of the episode. And should you like it, should you not like it, should you want to give your feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic that I can use on this podcast, then the social media links are usually in the description below. They rarely ever change, and the DMs are always open, and I would be more than happy to have you guys reach out to me, and I can handle whatever it is that you send me accordingly. Now, I do need to get into the topics of today, and I want to kick things off by speaking about how now it seems like we are in a position as a country, at least as far as Kenya is concerned, where people will not be hiding the fact that they are married. And the reason for this particularly interesting piece of information is the fact that the government has decided that they will start publishing your marriage details, or should I say your wedding details, on the online government platform eCitizen. And by government, I mean the Registrar of Marriages. Now, I am going to read the story where I got this so that we can properly understand what it is that I'm speaking of. So, the story says, and I quote, Kenyans have been left stunned after discovering that the Registrar of Marriages is now publishing details of soon-to-be married couples, including their names, passport photos, and wedding dates on the eCitizen platform. Previously, such notices were pinned to the doors of registry offices for 21 days to allow for objections. The new system moves this process online in line with legal requirements for public notification under the Marriage Act. While the move aims to modernize services, it has sparked debate online. Some Kenyans raised data privacy concerns, questioning whether the public release of personal details violates constitutional protections. Others joked that the listings are exposing secret relationships and double lives. End quote. Okay, now, how do I think this is? Okay, of course there are people that are like, finally we're going to expose these married and married-to-be individuals, more so men, that will be running out here with babes. Because I do remember, I think it was like maybe 2 years ago, women would do this thing where they would upload their guy's photo either to Facebook pages or on TikTok, and women would comment on whether they know this guy, is this guy someone that is taken, and people would give details such as the guy's real name, his age, what he does, and whether he's married or not, whether he's single or taken, and so on and so forth. So I feel like the people that would probably want to use a feature like that the most are women. And you could say that there's like issues with that and all, but honestly, I feel like this isn't all that bad of a thing. Okay, like let's look at some of the cons that are there. All right. Now, the one that holds the most water is the one about the whole Data Protection Act and the fact that you're publishing someone's personal details online for the public to see, and that is not that good of a thing, and I can get that. And from that standpoint, that definitely does hold water, but I think beyond having it actually challenged legally, I don't see why that's that big of an issue. But, granted, I don't know what it is that people would want to use that sort of data for. But beyond that, I feel like it's a massive win for people. Because you think about it, if they've started by moving stuff like this online, I feel like the quote-unquote most hypothetical future that you can kind of have in this case is where you and your partner, provided that you guys want to get married and you already did your applications and everything, can do it from the house. So you guys can wake up a single couple and take a nap after lunch, a married couple, and you guys can do it online through Zoom. So you can have the AG there or whoever it is that's supposed to do like the whole officiating of the vows of the two of you. You can have your witnesses who are your homies just log in via Zoom. Like you can basically do your wedding from home without having to involve anyone. And honestly, like I feel like that might be a massive plus for people that like to go to the AG's office. I don't know if there's usually a backlog of people or people that are usually trying to get married and then there's issues, but for the most part, it'll simplify the process of exchanging vows as far as using the government is concerned to a level where it's almost something that can be done from home just online. And I see that as a massive, massive plus. Although at the same time, when you kind of think about it, you going to marry, like let's say for example, this is a woman, she's going to marry a guy called Joseph Okello, all right, just hypothetical. And then, they check on the database and they find that there's like 3 of them. And it's like, oh, so I have this friend that works at the registrar of marriages and shit, and they were busy looking at it, and why are you supposedly listed as married or some shit? Like that would probably be the wildest scenario that most people would think about from a thing like this, of which I can probably agree with them. It's just from the article that I was reading, it's not just going to have the name of the person there, but they're also going to have the photo of the person. So when you kind of think about it, at least from that standpoint, even though there's 5 Joseph Okellos, you'll know which one is the actual one. Just saying. Not unless if the guy decides to like grow a beard over a couple of years after the time he got married when he didn't have like facial hair and shit. And I know there's people that are like, oh, but if you were previously married, oh, this is finally our chance to find out if you're engaged and you're supposed to be married and you're playing a babe. Oh, this is when people will find out. And honestly, like I've ignored trying to look at that sort of angle for the entirety of this time I've been talking about it for a very obvious reason, actually. The reason why I'm not looking at that is because by the time you're choosing to be with, to have a thing, to date a guy who just so happens to have their details on his citizen, and you can probably find out if he's engaged or married, there's a pretty good chance that you already knew from the jump, or you found out and you're still there. And I know this is probably gonna sound like a bunch of BS, or there's people that play each other like that. And honestly, I feel like there's very nuanced cases of that happening, but more often than not, by the time you're with someone who either has a girlfriend or a wife or a fiance, there's a pretty good chance that you know about her existence. More so if they are in and around the whole marriage area. Just mostly because that is going to be someone that will be calling this guy frequently, and how her contact is saved on dude's phone is going to be particularly telling. Of course, there are cases where you'll see that it's just the name, but you'll notice that there's a frequency in which that guy is being called by said person. He can say that that's the sister, but it's not like you'll constantly tell your sister I love you after every single call. It'll seem a little bit excessive even when you kind of think about it. So by the time someone is like, oh, we can finally use this to see if guys are taken or not, like, for the most part, if the dude is taken and he's married, there's a pretty good chance, especially considering that nowadays guys know that the more taken you are, the more in demand you are in the market. Like, dude will basically just come out and say, yep, I have a babe, I have a wife. Or by the time he's trying to get with you, he's like, yo, we need to keep this quiet. I don't want my wife or my fiance finding out. Or you'll just notice that he's trying to do things in a very hush-hush manner. So, it kind of is going to be written on the wall for the most part, maybe an invisible ink that you can mostly see, but essentially it's not like it's going to be news for you to find out that he's either engaged or married to a particular woman. So for the people that think that they can now use this online list to find out if the guy that's been with their best friend is taken or not, there's a pretty good chance that if your best friend doesn't know, then she could either be naive, or she's in denial, or she's been knowing about it and she's just been lying to you this entire time. Either way, I want to see how it might actually end up being used by people that believe they could use it for this, but all in all, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, I usually like watching street interviews because normally it kind of tells you how some people think in one of the most open and fairly random scenarios where regular everyday people get to give their opinions on matters society and culture. So when I stumbled across this particularly interesting video where a young lady was being interviewed on a couple of relationship questions, I was particularly interested in some of the things that she had to say. Now, she was asked about 3-4 questions, and out of all of them, there was one that piqued my interest because it goes back to something I've discussed before, probably even fairly recently. And also at the same time, it is something that I hear more and more people speaking about, yet I don't think people ever think about in the proper, practical, hypothetical sense. Now, before I can say anything more, I am going to let the video play, then I can give my thoughts on the entire thing. So, without further ado...
Do you think money is a key factor in a relationship?
It depends. For me, it's not, but for a lot of people, it is. And I feel like it's really sad that a lot of people look for a significant other to solve their financial problems rather than you going and solving them yourself. Yeah.
Sensational.
Now, do you think our parents should organize for us marriages?
I mean, yes and no. Yes, because the streets are dirty. There's a lot of rats on the highway. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's why we need arranged marriages. Also, some of you are not serious. Guy, unakwanga tu watu wa upuzi. I also feel like people are so superficial. You don't have time to build relationships. Mko tu, mnataka sijui iPhone, mnataka sijui kwenda Mombasa. I'm like, guys, see, you can just go to Snow Cream for a date. You don't have to go to the coast. Yeah, very simple things in life matter.
Now, why do you think that modern dating is hard for a young generation?
Well, that's not serious, or we are too serious. I mean, you get in with too much energy, inaisha too. Like if a guy, you meet him today, tomorrow he's saying, oh, I want to marry you, huh? Yeah.
Where?
Yeah.
So, what's the biggest red flag that you check in a guy?
People who talk a lot. Men who talk a lot. You have 2 years and 1 month. Why is your mouth being used more than your 2 years? Keep quiet.
Okay, now I'll be very honest, out of most of the Kenyan girls that I see or hear giving street interviews, she sounded fairly level-headed and actually pretty good. Like, not just as far as eloquence is concerned, but just the points that she was giving were actually fairly solid. Although there were some that I could probably tweak a little bit. Now, out of the 4 questions, I think there's 3 that I can probably answer. The red flags one, I'd probably ignore it. Not because she said people that talk a lot and I may be a guy that talks a lot, but, you know, just because red flags are mostly a very subjective thing. Now, going to her first question, which was, do you think that money plays a key factor in relationships? I think she just looked at it from the I don't date broke people kind of thing that you will hear a bunch of women saying here and there. And I guess maybe you could even say maybe a few guys might say such a thing, but I think it goes well beyond that. Personally, I don't think money being a key factor in relationships is a bad thing. I think it's just almost fact for most people, but I don't think it should be used as an indicator. That's probably how I'd answer it, because when you have it as a key factor, there's way more to it than just are you choosing to date someone based on whether they have money or not. Now, of course, she gave her point on the whole choosing to date someone because of money or purely because of money. And, you know, it was fairly in line with what it is that I usually say and believe. So I won't really get into that. But I feel like money being a key factor in relationships is particularly important because you guys need to understand how to manage money and just finances in general as a couple, not as a way to like figure out who it is that you're dating. Personally, I feel like financial management between couples is way more important than even finding a partner, potential or otherwise, who has money. Just mainly because like that money at that time can be gone in the next. But when you are with someone and you learn how to manage your finances together, whether you're combining incomes, whether one income is going to be used as a savings or not, or however it is that you guys want to do it, it is very, very important. Also, if shit hits the fan, you know, it would suck for you guys to be in a tough situation as a couple or as a partnership just purely based off of the fact that all of you are depending on one person's income and the other person wasn't trying to do anything with theirs, or you guys were living well beyond your means and you didn't plan yourselves properly for it. But that wasn't even the main question that I wanted to look at. The one that I wanted to look at was the second one, so I'll just skip that one and then move on to the third question, which she was asked, which was what she thinks is wrong with modern dating, or at least why she thinks it's so hard. And what she was making as an argument was more of an intensity issue, which I don't think is the case entirely. Of course, she does actually still seem particularly right as far as giving opinions is concerned. Because yes, there are some people that get in and they're too serious, and there's others that get in and they're not serious at all. Some people are ready to get married, other people are just in it for fun. Sometimes it's two incompatible people. Like, there's so many ways that you can argue that out. But personally, I feel like the most simplified answer that I can use for why modern dating is hard today is that there's just a shit ton of noise. That's the most oversimplified answer that I can probably give. If I was to simplify it a little less and just move it out, I'd say it's a combination of factors which would come from things like past traumas, things like influence from social media and just the media in general, and also just broken structures in which a lot of people have grown up in, which have dictated how they believe relationships should be, or how they think that they should be, or just do relationships in general. But there's no one full solution for it. So just the same way I said, there's a shit ton of noise out here was the most oversimplified way I could look at it. But there's definitely multiple angles to it, and different people can look at it in all sorts of different ways. But her answer wasn't bad. I just feel like it was too specific to one particularly small thing, which was intensity. But now, the pièce de résistance of what it is that I wanted to discuss on this episode was actually the second question, where she was being asked if she believes that parents should go back to organizing the people that we marry, or at least organizing the marriages for us, in that they would go and look for the partner that we should marry. And she was mostly in agreement, even though she did say yes and no. Unfortunately, I didn't see the no part there as far as the clip is concerned, but I feel like more and more people nowadays speak on that, where they'd be like, I think it would be so much better if my parents got me a partner, or if arranged marriages were a thing. And I don't know, maybe it's just me that thinks about it in a particularly different way, but I don't think that it would be that great for most people. Like, as far as relationships and potential marriages can actually go down, I don't think it's going to be the biggest benefit for most people. And it's mostly because when you look at who gets to benefit and who gets to lose, like, it's sort of a sliding scale of people, and those that get to lose tend to increase as the scale continues on. Because essentially, I feel like if arranged marriages were brought back as the norm for people, assuming that, whoosh, hypothetical imaginary society is concerned, I think there's going to be probably about 3, 4, maybe 5 different classes of people that are going to be affected here. So there's going to be the people that will be saved by arranged marriages. Then there's people that are going to suffer from arranged marriages. Then there's people that will feel cheated when it comes to the particular partner that they ended up with. Then there are those people that will probably be protected or will gain from the arranged marriage, and that one kind of goes back to the whole family sense. But all in all, I feel like the biggest pile of people are just going to be the people that will lose, and lose a lot. And I will kind of get to them. So when you look at the people that are going to be saved, those are mainly going to be the people that have been having just benefits as far as life is concerned. So you are from, say, a well-off family, you've been raised particularly well, both parents are still together, your family has a particularly good name. You are saved because even though you haven't been as active in the dating market because probably you don't want to date or you're just tired of trying, your parents can still find you a particularly good mate as far as looking for people in high social status is concerned. So it works to your favor if that's the case. If you're also healthy, if there's no massive history of hereditary issues and so on and so forth, people like that are going to be saved, especially if they weren't really looking for someone. but they would love to be with someone, so they were mostly probably just chilling at home or they were just on their ass. Those are the people that are going to be saved. But then now you look at the people that are going to suffer. So when you look at the idea of arranged marriages, it is very based off of due diligence and getting to know about the other person's family. Now, back in the day, that was particularly easy to do, or it wasn't as hard to do, because it's not like families were moving from place to place. They would be roughly about the same area and they'd be there for like decades and decades. So you'd have people that you could basically go and use for due diligence, and they would just basically corroborate the stories and just tell you if there's any potential issues with that particular family, their sort of reputation, any scandals or drama, any issues that they might be trying to hide under the rug. Like, those were the benefits that came from arranged marriages back in the day. You could do your due diligence. But you look at today, like, people have been moving from place to place. It's not like your parents and even you as a kid probably stayed in the same place for all your lives. Like, most people I know who've grown up around about my age, even a couple of years older or younger, have been in families that have moved at least 2 times. Even personally for me, like, my family has moved a couple of times. So there's not that much information that you'd be able to get from like the people that are staying around my parents right now. They can say that we're good, but they probably don't even have as much access to information as far as what it is that we might be hiding from most of the general public. On top of that, you find that there's fewer people now that know much about each other, especially with suburban living and people just choosing to mind their own business. So you can't really get that much information. And the reason I'm saying all of this is because you might end up choosing to marry someone because they look like they're from a good family. Your parents have gone, they've looked at them, they're like, these guys seem like they're genuinely great people. And then after a couple of years, you realize that they engage in witchcraft, or they are night runners, or probably, they probably have a history of domestic abuse that they basically just keep, under the covers that no one ever talks about. And their kid kind of picked up that sort of behavior and they kind of hate you. And every time you go to complain to them, they're like, oh no, these are some of the issues that happen when it comes to relationships. You guys can just sort it out and move on. Oh, it's not that big of a problem, blah, blah, blah. So when you choose to be with such people, it is going to be a suffering situation for the person that was very unsuspecting and didn't know shit. Now, of course, today we have divorces and people can separate and shit, but back in the day, when arranged marriages were the thing, divorce and separation wasn't usually something that they embraced very easily. You would have to go through so much work before these guys are like, all right, I think it's time you two split. They'll always try to come together and sort of fix whatever issues that you guys are having and expect that you guys will fix things through and continue moving. Then you look at the third batch of people, the people that will feel cheated, who also kind of fall almost under this same exact moniker of, like, we thought we knew the people that we're marrying into, but that wasn't really the case. So for example, if they faked like a particularly good lifestyle, so they look like they were financially good and they were doing all right, but then you marry into that family and you're thinking, you know what, us guys are good, then you suddenly find out that this is someone that's basically using whatever money they have to keep up a lifestyle they can't afford. Or, these guys basically lie to people that they're doing all that great, yet they're not. And they basically try to mask that shit using certain things that would make it look like they are of a much higher status than they actually are. So eventually, over time, like, you feel as though you were played and you were almost like swindled or conned into getting into a marriage that doesn't particularly benefit you. But then now, the flip side of that is that if you were from the family that hasn't been doing all that great and is trying to keep up a face, you'll feel like you are, gaining from the entire thing. So if you're not particularly well off and maybe you've been weighed down by black tax, this is your opportunity to be assisted or, to get away from that sort of problem. If you've been struggling but you've been trying to keep up face and then, you marry into money, that could be the way that, you get saved or your family gets saved and shit like that. So essentially you'll be protected because the girl's family, or let's say even the boy's family, doesn't want to show that they made a bad choice as far as selecting a partner. And also at the same time, they want to keep up face. They want to show that, we're all people of particularly good status. So they might actually put in the work to try and uplift the other side just so that they can get things level and not cause issues that can affect them on a public level. So to some degree, like, there are going to be people that will definitely gain, but out of all of these people, the people that I feel for the most are those that I consider to be the biggest losers, which are the people that will probably be from families that have many hereditary issues, the ones that don't have the best name out here, just publicly speaking, whether it's for real or fake reasons, whether people circulated fake rumors or not, they just have a bad name. People that are involved in, say, some form of familial or cultural traditions that may not be considered particularly good for a lot of people today. So something like witchcraft could be in that. You could also throw in single parent situations, especially since, like, back in the day, at least back when arranged marriages were a thing, being a single parent wasn't considered to be a particularly good thing or a good situation for someone to be in. So it was actually almost kind of frowned upon. So you find that such people, which makes up a lot of people out here who come from families where some level of divorce or separation is involved, when you come from a family that isn't too financially well off or isn't very high status, if you live in a place where people have just been circulating bad rumors about you, if you've been trying to get out of a particular bad situation where your family has been in and it's well known to people, essentially if you have bad PR or if you come from a family that has bad PR, then you get to lose. And the thing that makes this worse is the fact that it's not like you can control it, like your actions or your behaviors. This is something that is associated with your family, so it's well outside of your control, and it's not something that you can particularly fix all that well. And I'll give you a particularly good example of this. So I have a friend from this North African country called Mauritania. It's not that big, that's why you probably don't hear about it all that much. But essentially, like, in that country, they tend to be particularly cultural, and the thing that makes you stand out or can give you the biggest boost is your family tree. It's actually the main thing that people actually pay attention to. So if you're from a good family tree, then you are a good suitor for someone to kind of marry into. But if you're not from a good family tree, then, you're kind of fucked. And the thing is, like, it doesn't even matter whether you have a lot of money or you don't. You just have to be from a good family tree. So, like, if I was related to the Kenyatta's family tree, which has produced, say, for example, 2 presidents, then I may be considered to be from a good family tree. So even though I am a broke dude who barely makes ends meet, you will find that there are people that are lining up and they want good suitors, or at least they want to make for a good suitor so that they can be part of a good family tree. So when you kind of look at it, that's something that would help them stand out. But at the same time, it also sucks for them, because now my parents would also want someone from a good family tree, which kind of leaves them a little bit in the dark here. So it's like same level or above, but no one ever really wants to go below. And that now becomes a new issue that people don't usually prepare for. Because when it comes to arranged marriages, the biggest issue isn't you, the individual, or how you behave. It's your family and the kind of PR that they have. You can throw in earnings there and, maybe it might soften things, for the most part. But essentially at the end of the day, it's your family's PR. So if your family has great PR, then cool. And if it goes in line with a lot of what the culture likes at the time, then cool. But if not, then you end up being the biggest loser in all of this. So to kind of conclude this entire thing, what I can tell you is, for most people out here who think that arranged marriages might be the thing that can actually help them the most, or might be the best answer for people in the dating market, I'd argue that it probably won't be. For most people, arranged marriages might actually not be the biggest win for you, not unless if you're already winning, of which if you're in a position where you're already winning, then you don't really need arranged marriages per se. Because at the end of the day, like, yes, you could argue out that, maybe you can find someone that ticks all the various boxes as far as good arranged marriage situations are. But at the end of it, this is also someone that could also just be putting a good face for the family, and they think that they'd make for a good partner, but in reality, they probably might be a shitty individual. So to give the most democratized option, in as much as it is probably the shittiest one as far as people talking about the dating market is concerned, Just stick to the current dating market. There's definitely gems there. And it'll probably take away a lot of these other problems that arranged marriages will probably never really show you. Because you know what? It's all about the PR. Although, then again, maybe I might be wrong, maybe I don't entirely look at things, or maybe I'm just pessimistic or a cynic when it comes to this entire topic. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.